Hello students, here I am again to meet you and tell you about the next part of the chapter. Before moving further, let's discuss what all we have discussed in the previous parts. We discussed the varied physiography of India. That is, we discussed about the mountains in the north, the Great Northern Plains and the Peninsular Plateau. We also discussed the interesting features of the Himalayan ranges. We discussed how the northern plains were formed and what are the various subdivisions of the Himalayan region, the Great Northern Plains and the Peninsular Plateau. Today, we are moving on further to the next three physical divisions of India. Today, we'll discuss about the western part of Rajasthan, which is a desert. We'll discuss about the eastern and the western coast and, of course, not to forget the beautiful island groups of India. So, let us move on to the first physiographic division for today, that is the Marusthali or the Western Rajasthan region. Now, Western Rajasthan in the present age is well known for the Thar Desert. It is believed that during the Mesozoic era, the desert was under the sea. Researchers have discovered a set of rare wood boring trace fossils in the Barmer region, which reveals that this area was a tropical forest and even had a vast river network. This can be again emphasized by the evidence which is available at the Wood Fossils Park at Akil and marine deposits around the Brahmasar region near Jaisalmer. The approximate age of the wood fossils is estimated to be 180 million years. Though the underlying rock structure of the desert is the extension of peninsular plateau, yet due to extreme conditions, its surface features have been carved by the physical weathering and wind actions. Why is wind so dominant in desert region? Yes, you're correct, because this region doesn't have vegetation, so the velocity of the wind is high here, which carves whatever comes on its way, huge rocks, small rocks, etc. Some of the well-pronounced desert land features present here are mushroom rocks, shifting dunes and oases. What is a mushroom rock? Mushroom rock is nothing to eat. A huge rock is carved from all the sides by the action of the wind. It gets carved and acquires the shape of a mushroom. Hence, it is known as a mushroom rock. Now, let's talk about the rivers in the Marusthali. On the basis of orientation, the desert can be divided into two parts. The northern part is sloping towards the Sindh and the southern is sloping towards the Rann of Kutch. You remember, we discussed this Rann of Kutch in our first lesson. Most of the rivers in this region are ephemeral. That means they do not last for a longer time. They finish off very quickly. They dry up very quickly. The Luni River, flowing in the southern part of the desert, is of some significance. Low precipitation and high evaporation makes this region a water scarce region, a water deficit region. There are some streams which disappear after flowing for some distance and present a typical case of inland drainage. Inland drainage means these rivers do not reach the sea. So, these rivers, they join a lake or a palaya. The lakes and the palayas have brackish water, salty water, which is the main source of obtaining salt. What is a palaya? You must be thinking about it. It is a dry, vegetation-free, flat area in the undrained desert basin. So, when you visualize a desert, you always think of sand dunes, vast area covered with sand, small hills, big hills, of course of sand, moving sand dunes, camels, low vegetation, thorny bushes, and you are right. These are the features which are found in the western part of Rajasthan, which we are also naming as Marusthali. Children, let's move on to the coastal plains. India has a vast coastline, 6,100 kilometers long coastline. So, we have divided this coast for the basic purpose of understanding better eastern coast and western coast. The peninsular plateau is flanked by a stretch of narrow coastal strips running along the Arabian Sea in the west and the Bay of Bengal on the east. Before we move on further, let me explain you two terms which frequently come in the chapter. They are emergent coasts and submergent coasts. Submergent coasts are stretches along the coast that have been inundated by the sea by a relative rise in sea levels. Western coast is a submergent coast, whereas eastern coast is an emergent coast. It is a stretch along the coast that has been exposed by the sea by a relative fall of the sea levels. So children, when I talk about emergent and submergent, you should be clear that emergent where the fall of the sea is less and submergent where the water of the sea is submerging the land. Now, let us talk about the western coast. The western coast is sandwiched between the Western Ghats and the Arabian Sea. It is a narrow coastal plain, not very wide as the eastern coast. It consists of three sections: Konkan in the north, central stretch is known as Kannada coast, and the southern stretch is referred as Malabar coast. The western coast, I have told you, they are the example of submerged coast. It is believed, it is a very interesting fact, it is believed that the city of Dwarka, which was once a part of Indian mainland situated along the west coast, is submerged underwater. Because of this submergence, it is a narrow belt and provides natural conditions for the development of seaports and harbours. Kandla, Mazagaon, Jawaharlal Nehru Seaport, Nhava Sheva, Marmagao, Mangalore, Cochin, these are all important seaports of this particular western strip. Now, this western coast is also given different names. Extending from the Gujarat coast in the north to the Kerala coast in the south, the western coast may be divided into these divisions which I am referring now. Kathiawar coast is in Gujarat, Konkan coast in Maharashtra, Goan coast in Karnataka, and Malabar coast in Kerala. The western coastal plains are narrow in the middle and get broader in the north and the south. The rivers flowing through this coastal plain do not form any delta. They just form a tidal mouth of the river, which is also referred as estuaries. This west coast has a lot of backwaters. The Malabar coast has got certain distinguishing features in the form of kayals. Kayals are backwaters which are used for fishing, inland navigation, and also due to its special attraction for the tourists. Kayals are the shallow lagoons or inlets of the sea lying parallel to the coastline. They are formed by the action of waves and shore currents, creating low barrier islands across the mouth of many rivers flowing through these Western Ghats. Every year, have you heard of famous Nehru Trophy? The famous Nehru Trophy, Vallamkalli, which is a boat race, is held in Punnamada Kayal in Kerala. Now, if you are clear about the western coast, we are moving on to the eastern coast. Let's gain more knowledge about the eastern coast. The plains along the Bay of Bengal are very wide and levelled plain. In the northern part, they are referred as northern Sirkars, while in the southern part, they are named as Coromandel coast. Large rivers like Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna and Kaveri, they form extensive deltas on this coast. Lake Chilika, it is an important feature along the eastern coast. The eastern coastal plain is broader as an example of emergent coast, if you remember. There are well-developed deltas here, formed by the rivers flowing eastward into the Bay of Bengal. So, I have given you the names, do not forget these rivers. Because of the emergent nature, it has a number of ports and harbours, but not as compared to the western coast. The ports and harbours are lesser here. Have you heard of the name Paradeep, Vishakhapatnam, Chennai, isn't it? So, the continental shelf extends up to 500 kilometers into the sea, which makes it very difficult for the development of good ports and harbors. So now you know about the emergent coast and the submergent coast and the various features of the eastern and the western coast. Now we are moving on to the last part of the chapter, our beautiful island groups. You know which are the island groups in Bay of Bengal? Correct. It is Andaman and Nicobar. And in the Arabian Sea, they are the Lakshadweep Islands. So we'll start with the Lakshadweep Islands, the most beautiful islands of India. The Lakshadweep Island group lies closer to the Malabar coast of Kerala. This group of islands is composed of small coral islands. Corals are microorganisms, coral polyps, which die and join together, and these coral islands are formed. You must have heard of Great Barrier Reef, which is also a coral island. Earlier, they were known as Laccadive, Minicoy, and Eminadive. In 1973, they were named as Lakshadweep Islands. It covers a very small area. Kavaratti is the administrative capital of this particular island. This island group has great diversity of flora and fauna. The Piti Island, which is uninhabited, has a very famous bird sanctuary. The island in the Arabian Sea, they include Lakshadweep and Minicoy too. These are scattered between 8 degrees north to 12 degrees north and 71 degrees east to 74 degrees east longitude. These islands are located at a distance of 280 to 480 kilometers off the Kerala coast. The entire group of islands is made up of coral deposits. There are approximately 36 islands, of which 11 are uninhabited. Nobody lives there. Minicoy is the largest island with an area of 453 square kilometers. So, we can say Lakshadweep Islands can broadly be divided by the 11th degree channel, north of which is Emini Island and south of which is Cananore Island. The islands of this archipelago. What is an archipelago? Archipelago means chain of islands. The islands of this archipelago have storm beaches consisting of unconsolidated pebbles. Unconsolidated means loosely joined, loosely arranged. So, these beaches have unconsolidated sediments, pebbles, shingles, cobbles, boulders, all on the eastern seaboard. So, don't you think Lakshadweep Islands are a place to visit? It's a beautiful place for the tourism too. Now, we are moving on to the next group of islands, that is the Andaman and Nicobar Island groups. The elongated chain of islands located in the Bay of Bengal, extending from north to south, are known as Andaman and Nicobar Islands. They are bigger in size in comparison to Lakshadweep Islands and are more numerous and scattered. They are not very close to each other, they are scattered. The entire group of islands is divided into two broad categories, the Andamans in the north and the Nicobars in the south. The Bay of Bengal island groups, that is the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, they consist of 572 islands. These are situated roughly between 6 degrees north to 14 degrees north and 92 degrees east to 94 degrees east. The two principal groups of islands include Ritchie's Archipelago and Leibnitz Island. The entire group of islands is divided into two broad categories, I have told you, Andamans in the north and Nicobars in the south. They are separated by a water body which is known as 10-degree channel. So now if you see the comparison, Lakshadweep, they are separated by 11 degrees channel and Andaman and Nicobar are separated by 10 degrees channel. It is believed that these islands are an elevated portion of submarine mountains. We have abundant physical features inside the oceans also. So some smaller islands are volcanic in origin. You know, here is an interesting fact. Barren Island, it is the only active volcano in India which is situated in the Nicobar Islands. The entire group of islands is divided into two categories and separated by 10 degrees channel. Now, when we have spoken about all the physical divisions of India, children, all these physical divisions, you talk about mountains, plains, plateaus, all of them, they are complementary to each other. The Himalayas, they save us from the cold winds coming from the north, isn't it? The Siberian cold winds. Otherwise, India would have been a cold desert. But no, India has proper favorable climate. Himalayas, they have rich vegetation cover. They are the source of water. They are the point of tourism, extensive flora and fauna. The great northern plains, granaries of India, on which huge population depends for agriculture. The plateau, the storehouse of minerals, on which all modern industries are dependent, which brings a lot of economic concern to India. The coastal strips, very rich for fishing region, very rich for crude oil, rich, abundant resources. Moreover, help in trade and commerce with the help of seaports and harbors. The island groups, they are also favoring us for the point of tourism. So all these physical features of India, they work together for the development of the country, for the economic development of country. That's why we say, सारे जहां से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा. Jai Hind.